All right, viewers, thanks for tuning in. This is a video about geoengineering. Now, I've been promising a video about chemtrails for quite a while, and our regular viewers probably are aware that I don't really believe in chemtrails. But what I want to do here first is I want to read nearly verbatim the email that I sent to a friend who happens to be a commercial airline pilot. He will remain unnamed, but he's been doing it quite a while. He's been doing it an undisclosed period of time. So, without further ado, let me read the email nearly verbatim, only censoring it to cover up names and other identifying factors, since he is not a representative of the company for which he works. Now, the images you're seeing here are from my Instagram account. You can check it out at instagram.com/smAsho if you like. And these are all almost entirely from NASA. These are NASA GOES visible satellite images from this past summer. You can see this one has super extreme currents that you can completely see. I mean, the clouds are clearly evaporating and forming, not based on wind patterns, but that's not what we want to get into right now. We want to get into the chemtrails. So here's another image of Lichtenberg patterns over mostly southern New York there, but also Pennsylvania. And I'll make that the visual aid for when I read this email. So here's the email, nearly verbatim. So in order to condense as much information as possible, I wanted to carefully think about what to ask regarding chemtrails. First, let's settle on what the term chemtrails means. What we're talking about in this forum are an alleged global-scale program of spraying chemicals from aircraft, including commercial airliners, as an explanation for the persistent contrails people see overhead, especially around airports. So in the context of this email, that's what we're talking about when we say chemtrails. We are not talking about geoengineering as a whole, although we will at the end of the video. Now, I want to be upfront in stating I don't believe a large-scale program is a thing that's occurring. Certainly, commercial aircraft are not intentionally spraying chemicals. Let me just continue on with the email. Now, I do believe that what could be described as chemtrails has occurred on a very small scale in the past. It is effective at altering the weather a bit. It's been being done since the 40s. Any contrails, especially persistent contrails, do constitute a form of pollution in that they raise the Earth's albedo artificially. They are an artificial cloud. So let's get that squared right away. And there are going to be some chemicals, including some exotics, in the exhaust due to the composition of things like seals and fuel additives and the composition of the jet turbines themselves, not to mention various other aerosols that are in the air. So, I'm 100% against geoengineering of any kind, so without further explanation, would you share with me and my YouTube channel any information that you have? Also, if you'd like to answer a follow-up question on a completely unrelated matter, can you tell us anything not yet covered in the mainstream news regarding the 737 models that have been down in the U.S.? I am aware of the retrofitting, the weight changes, the change in position of the engines, the flight control for anti-stall. I'm aware of all those systems. Besides that, I don't know much about it, so thanks for your consideration. So, here's the response. Contrails. Now, this is, again, from a commercial airline pilot who is more than a veteran. He's been doing this for let's say decades. Regarding contrails, I've been passionate about airplanes since I was a little kid and observed and learned about them over the years. They are condensation trails, and the condensation varies with atmospheric conditions. Some days they don't form at all. Other days they form readily and stay all day. Some days they form and dissipate rapidly. I've flown across the North Atlantic and observed the contrails of other airplanes that are 1,000 feet above or below traveling the same direction. You get to see how the wake turbulence affects the contrails. 4 engine versus 2. Sometimes you can see the outflow valve adding to the stream. Is it possible that something is being added to create some kind of climactic effect? All I can say is I see no evidence to support that. You can see contrails in old World War II photos of the high-altitude bombers. I don't see any difference in the frequency or intensity of contrails, not that I study them scientifically. That's his stance. That's his stance on contrails and chemtrails. He sees no evidence that it's being done, and he's been exposed to the world of it for decades. Now, regarding the 737 MAX, I will leave a link in the description to a website to which I was referred, which apparently does have accurate info. But here's his official response about the 737 MAX. Most big airplanes have some kind of augmentation to address issues during certification. In the case of the 737 MAX, they put bigger engines on it, and underwing engines tend to make the plane pitch up. More powerful engines make it pitch up harder. They probably found certain extreme situations the pitch-up tendency was too strong for worst-case scenarios and added this system to add some nose-down force automatically. Perhaps the added layers of automation created an environment where different failure modes can occur. I think this system uses an angle of attack indicator. Old-fashioned systems would use the output directly from the indicator. New uses computerized systems where the analog inputs go into data concentrators where it's distributed. I don't know exactly how the 737 MAX system works, but it appears it's getting erroneously triggered. I think the experts will speak once the Ethiopians release the data, as they want to get the MAX flying again ASAP. And what he said there is equivalent to what I read. I did a little bit of research on this because I do know a little bit about planes. And indeed, it seemed like the flight control system to pitch the nose down was getting erroneously triggered. Now let's move on to the rest of geoengineering. Here's another prime example of, this is a video from the ground, obviously, that I took. Also available on our Instagram page. And we talk about this occasionally on the space weather videos as it is related to space weather. And just show you a couple more here. Now again, remember, we're saying atmospheric conditions are what cause this, not chemicals being sprayed intentionally. This video here, this is from some video somewhere on YouTube. I forget which one it is actually. I believe I do have the link in the description of this video here. What this is this is the behavior of water when it's being exposed to a positive to negative current flow and a negative to positive anode-cathode current flow. So here's this video. The first bit, I believe that's a positive. A positive anode to an uncharged cathode. And then I think they're going to do, okay, this one's about the way water affects the conductivity going through a piece of stone. So, but there's a video on YouTube you should watch about that because it's a major part of atmospheric physics. And let me just move on to the next slide. Now here's another one depicting Hall currents over Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Maryland. What we do some days is we actually look at these and then we look at the water vapor map and we show you how these field force lines, they're showing up perpendicular to the mode of travel of the clouds, indicating that they are indeed Hall currents. So keep in mind the water in the atmosphere is a polar molecule, and that's why it has those effects. Let me move on to the next slide. Now, we're not going to talk about HAARP in this video. We are aware of HAARP and how it works, creating artificial ionization paths from ground-based microwave systems. That heats up the atmosphere, creates additional ionization pathways, which create additional condensation nuclei, and it's a real thing that can be done. Is it being done? I have no idea. I'd have to be up there watching. But the point is, Harvard is doing some little geoengineering practice right now in the form of a little experiment called the Scope X. And they will try very hard to tell you that this is innocuous. By the way, the jet stream points from Harvard to Europe. Does Europe get any say as to the particulates that are going to land over there, not to mention affecting the weather on the back end? I have stuff to say about it because some of my federal taxpayer dollars are undoubtedly going to Harvard. So I'll be contacting my local U.S. legislator shortly. Now, we don't want to go on and on about geoengineering. I find it to be a boring subject. Humans have been trying to control the weather ever since they realized that there might be any chance of doing it. Here's another hilarious article here on noinvite.com. A piece of hailstorm rocket fell into the yard of a family. They rushed home because of a heavy rainstorm, and guess what they found? Dun dun! Geoengineering rocket. Oh yeah. So, geoengineering is a real thing. It's really going on. It's not being performed by commercial aircraft. Those are very expensive machines that are used for very specific purposes. Also, it would take millions of flights to have any sort of a global effect. These rockets are a real thing. Bulgaria is shooting rockets at clouds. It's true. It's true. Also, without going totally into everything like crazy, let's go to Technocracy News and Trends to show you one other example before we end this video. China blanketing Tibet with massive rain-making geoengineering project. Get it? Now, does that appear to be a commercial aircraft to you? That looks a lot like a ground-based chemical burning platform. The Tibetan Plateau is at a very high altitude, as mostly everybody is aware. What they're doing is they're using heat to propel the chemicals into the air to seed clouds to try to increase the rainfall. We'll leave links to all that. I think it's a dumb idea. How about you? Now, lastly, let's tie this all into space weather here, because what really makes... the thing that really irritates me about the every contrail is a chemtrail idea is the fact that it's causing people to not understand the way atmospheric physics really works. And this is one of the major inputs to atmospheric physics. I know we look at this all the time, regular viewers, but bear with me. There might be people that have never seen this before, so just let me just zoom in on this. Now, you see, the Birkeland currents are the field-aligned currents that come in from the solar wind. They get split at the bow shock of the magnetosphere, and then they form into two separate currents. And then there's two currents that go right through the planet and out the other side. And all of those are spiral Birkeland currents. They look like this. And you see those yellow circles there? That's the Hall currents. When you're standing on the surface of the Earth, those clouds are forming in parallel lines due to those Hall currents. That's what causes it. So, the earthly currents that connect the field-aligned currents at the poles are called Peterson currents, because this stuff is all trying to reach equilibrium. And then the Hall currents are the ones coming out perpendicular to the current flow, which make their own currents. And then each one of those has their own current perpendicular to the current flow. Just like when we see a rope of plasma on the sun, it's the exact same thing, except it's invisible on the planet because it's in the form of a magnetic field. So, Now these Lichtenberg patterns here, these are, I believe, a tidal effect, because this only happens at the day-night terminator. But these were taken just in order to show people that there's electricity in the sky above your head, folks. Let's go back to this one again. Does that look like a Birkeland current in the sky to you? So the next time you see a weird cloud formation, go look at the water vapor map, and if you see perpendicular motion to these parallel lines in the sky, you will know that they are not man-made. Last but not least, one other nail in the chemtrail coffin. We've had comments on our YouTube videos more than once about people seeing spray planes on these satellite images. And guess what? You know what the resolution of these satellites is? 2 kilometers. It's a 2-kilometer resolution. So if you've ever seen a 2-kilometer wide contrail, please let us know in the comments. One last thing in closing. Cosmic rays are now known to cause an increase in cloud nucleation. So that's a serious thing, and that figures into the atmospheric physics. Spray planes don't really figure into the atmospheric physics. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks, donors. Anybody who wants to reach us, please email us at smashomash@gmail.com. And there's going to be a second video coming out later.